we see the great case in point of integrating industry with the financial services to bring about opportunities as well. So the Qianhai company has been specializing in the B-end services. You have the integrated supply chain. You are the first one of this kind in China to invest in the platinum bar. So you have reached a lot of great response from society as well. That's without further ado. So let's welcome the senior analyst coming from Precious Metal Institute of Qianhai Gold, Luan, to talk about the platinum shining brilliant light and to make sure that there are some investment opportunities under the economic uncertainty. Let's welcome Luan. Now it's my turn to do a very short and succinct presentation about platinum. Hello everyone, I come from Qianhai Gold Group. I work for its research institute as a senior analyst for precious metal. So if you look at how long I have been working in industry, not very long, 11 years. And throughout the past 11 years, so the areas of my exposure is mostly precious metal, like a gold and also silver and also the platinum, etc. We have been doing a lot of training for the banking sectors as well, and for some retail investors as well. So, and also online and offline training have been done by me as well. So I think I believe that over the past 1.5 days, a lot of experts have mentioned the supply and demand picture of platinum. They mentioned a lot of professional knowledge about it. So from my perspective, I'm going to talk about technical things and the fundamentals to give you some brief sharing. So first of all, let's try to look at the platinum, the year 2022, the trend and movement. In this chart, we can clearly view that at the beginning of this year, since January this year, until end of August right now, generally speaking, the overall picture is that platinum has always been declining continuously. So that is to say that judging from the big picture perspective, is tilting downward this year, not only platinum, but also gold and silver as well. So precious metal is on the way downward. So why do they keep declining? Because from the fundamental perspective, because of inflation in the U.S., other factors include the federal rates hike and starting from March this year. So they keep increasing the interest rate. So as a result of that, so this is a compressive forces for the precious metal. Let's look at the technical details. Now I'm trying to use like the mean line to draw in the middle. It's safe to say that in the process of the trading, so the mean line is something you are using. So even if you don't use this one, so still, if you really turn on the software in your mobile phone doing the stock trading, so by its default, there are a lot of different lines. So these lines are called average lines.
What do these average lines help us do? Firstly, it gives you a very intuitive understanding what the situation stands at, whether the price will go up or whether it goes down. So from this chart, you can see very clearly that the 250-day average line has been on a downward trend. In other words, the price has been going down for consecutive days. So on the whole, the situation or the trend is downward. In the meantime, regarding prices, be it in the stock market, in the futures market, or in the commodities market, actually there are certain momentum pushing up or pushing down prices when it comes to such average lines. So here I've just circled out 4 things, or I've put 4 yellow circles there. What does that mean? If you have learned anything about technical analysis, you know that they represent some basic law, which is the 8 principles out of all the 4 selling points. So I've circled out 3 selling points. In other words, when the price exceeds the average line or goes above the average line. However, the situation where the overall downward trend does not change, that represents very good selling point. That's how we see things from price perspective. It gives us a very intuitive or straightforward thing that when it's already reached a peak of the rebound, it's time for you to sell. That's basically the short-term situation. In other words, in the short run, has been on a downward trend. During such downward trend, a lot of value-guided investors or value investors, they have very good or very proper opportunities on the price front. But now let's take a look at the medium or longer range situation. So the chart gives you weekly lines of spot platinum. From this chart, you can see several things. Firstly, let's start with the average line. The average line just tells us that on the whole, which is indicated in blue here, from 2016 through 2017 all the way until 2020, it's been on a upward trend. However, starting in January 2020 to the end of August is being on a flat path. What does that mean? When the average line becomes flat, if it goes down, we know in the stock market it's called the bear run, whereas when it goes up, it's called the bull run. However, when it's flat, there is a term for it. It's called monkey run, like monkey jumping up and down. So currently the platinum at the current level in the long cycle, as well as with regard to longer term trend, personally speaking, I prefer to call it in a fluctuation phase. When things will pick up or trend up, we need to take a look at the relationship between price and the average line. If the average line trends upward, then we will start another round of bull run. But if the average line keeps going down, we should be braced for longer term downward run. And currently it's fluctuating a bit with slight downward run or spiral. In March 2020, due to the sudden outbreak of COVID, commodities across the board went down, and they went down dramatically, including platinum, which was not an exception, as low as $560 at the lowest. In the process of a rapid decrease of such prices, you also observed a dramatic rebound by a much larger margin than gold. Why? Why is that the case? That's because the weakness of humanity. Well, to summarize the weakness of humanity in four words or in 4 characters or in 2 phrases, greed and fear. So Warren Buffett once put it very properly or aptly. I'm greedy when people are fearful, and I am fearful when people are greedy. So most people, when they were fearful, a small group of people, they were greedy. So I read some industry news back when the COVID broke out. In some Shenzhen exchange, a lot of individual investors purchased in bulk at a scale of 30 or 50 kilograms of platinum physics. What happened in less than 1 year following that? Platinum price went up more than 100 times. In other words, when other people were fearful, when other people are fearful, you should be greedy. Later on, I'm going to talk about the situation in Shanghai Gold Exchange. What was the transaction amount back then? In March 2020, platinum transaction volume up to now, ever since it was listed in Shanghai Gold Exchange on the 17th of July 2003. So in March 2020, recorded the largest single month transaction amount. In other words, during COVID broke out, a lot of people chose to buy in. As a result, the price went up. So that's the second thing we can learn from this chart. And there is a third point I want to share with you. The third point is that if you take a look at overall situation of the chart, starting in 2008 and all the way on to 15 years later, the price of platinum around $800 formed a long-term support, and currently the platinum price again touches on or fluctuates around 800. Whenever the price goes below or whenever the price touches that level, it rebounds. Every time that is the case, there is no exception. For example, last week when platinum price again touched 800, so yesterday we saw slight increase of platinum price again. Why? That's because 800 represents the cost of mining of platinum. In other words, for mining companies, their cost is $800. So if the price is below $800 for a long period of time, a lot of mining companies they incur losses. As a result, they will stop mining themselves. Why? Because even if they mine and after they mine, the cost is even higher than the market price. In other words, they suffer losses. From the situation of platinum, actually, we can make association from 2015 to 2018, how gold performed during that period. I wonder if you still remember the situation for gold. From 2001 to 2011, gold experienced 10-year bull run as high as $1,920 at the peak, and the lowest point was $1,040. From 2011 to 2018, gold price fluctuated fluctuated around $1,200. In other words, whenever it touches or it touched 1,200, it had a slight rebound. Though it stayed at 1,200, such stay didn't last long. Why? Because $1,200 was at that time, fairly speaking, the cost of gold mining companies. So from this, you can see that the gold mining cost is $1,200, and the same can be said for platinum. In other words, the cost of mining will have a strong impact on price, providing price with strong support. So from this chart, we can see that in the medium to long run, platinum price wise, it's in a relatively it's in a situation we can't say that 800 is the bottom, but it's in the bottom area. So for platinum, in the long run, it's actually a good timing for you to do something about it. That's about the price. And then I would like to talk about the gold-platinum ratio, and I want to illustrate the relationship between gold and platinum. So in terms of gold-platinum ratio, you might not be familiar with it, but I'm sure you are familiar with gold-silver ratio. Why? Because gold-silver ratio is, to a lot of international mega hedge funds, a strategy that they adopt. They look at the change of gold-silver ratio, and with that, they try to see which one performs better. Is it gold or is it silver? For example, let's take a look at the situation this year. In the first 9 months of this year, the ratio went from 80 all the way up to the current 96. So at a stage when gold-silver ratio keeps going up, what's reflected in the prices of gold and silver respectively, things are very clear at this stage. When the ratio goes up, that means that gold is stronger than silver. In other words, for hedge funds, the strategy they adopt is to long gold, and they should simultaneously short silver. In the actual phase, or actually in the actual world, gold went down around 6%. So if I chose to long gold, I lost 6%. However, silver went down 22%. In other words, if I had shorted silver, I would incur much less losses from gold trading compared with the profits that I would generate from my trade in gold. That's the situation with gold-silver ratio. Similar things can be said for gold-platinum ratio. Basically, the price of gold is used and divided by the price of platinum to generate this ratio from 1991 to 2015 all the way to 2020. So in a range of around 20 years, the ratio has always maintained below 1. What does that mean? When the ratio is below 1, it means that gold is weaker than platinum. In other words, platinum always sells more expensively than gold. However, after 2015, we start to see that the ratio went up from 1, and it reached the highest point of 2.45 in March 2020, which represented a rare phenomenon, a rare occurrence, because for 20 to 30 years, gold-platinum ratio rarely hit above 2. When it goes beyond 2, what does that mean? It means that if you purchase 1 gram of gold, you can use the money to purchase 2 grams of platinum instead. In other words, for platinum compared with gold, platinum is strongly underestimated. And we also learn some basic information about platinum, and according to our knowledge, first of all, platinum is 30 times more rare than gold, and every year output of platinum is less than 1/10 that of gold, and currently gold-platinum ratio is still around 2. In other words, as mentioned previously, if you purchase 1 gram of gold, you can use the money instead to purchase 2 grams of platinum. In other words, platinum is underestimated, and platinum has some inherent value itself. In other words, platinum is becoming increasingly attractive, in particular in the recent 1 year or 2, as the gold-platinum ratio was around 2. Well, that's what we can learn from the gold platinum ratio, and from the ratio we know that platinum becomes increasingly attractive. I would like to point you to the relationship between platinum and palladium in the morning session of today. At the very beginning, the speaker from BASF mentioned that the replacement or the substitution between platinum and palladium, well, by the way, the presentation was delivered at 9:30, was the first presentation. According to him, the substitution of platinum and palladium will start a fast run. In other words, maybe previously the substitution was not very rapid, but going forward we will see much faster replacement or substitution. So from this chart we can see that in the 1990s, well, as early as 1990, as you can see from the chart, the gray line represents the situation of the price of platinum, whereas the red line represents the price trend of palladium. So as early as 1990s, and you can see that at the very beginning, platinum was much higher than the price of palladium. However, when it comes to 1996, in 1996 all the way to 2011, in between the 5 years, a lot of auto manufacturers, they accelerated such replacement or substitution. As a result, we started to find that in January 2001, the price of palladium exceeded that of platinum for the first time. Now after that, in the subsequent years after 2005, there was a period of substitution between the two, between platinum and palladium. So from the chart, it's very clear that from 2015 to 2017, the price of palladium was above the price of palladium. In other words, the platinum was more expensive than palladium during that period. In September 2017, the price between the two crossed over. In other words, there was another round of substitution. Well, what does that mean? That was because the wide price gap between platinum and the palladium. So over the past 2 to 3 decades, we found in the automobile industry, there have been several rounds of replacement or substitution between the two. Why? Primarily because automobile manufacturers, their costs of manufacturing changed. So you can see now that the price of palladium is already sky high. For example, in the beginning of this year, at the peak over 3,000.
Well, by comparison, platinum is relatively trapped at 2,000, which is a low level. So if we want to accelerate the substitution of the platinum, we understand that there will be such a scenario happening of which the gray line, again, is going to become like higher above the red one. So that is to say that platinum price is going to become over that of the palladium. So that's the relationship between platinum and the palladium. Now let's try to look at the future movement trend for platinum. Now, I would like to let you understand that at the early July, WPIC had already published a long-term report about the long-term supply and demand picture. In such a long-term supply and demand picture outlook report, we can tell that by the year 23 and 24, as well as 25, especially 26, think about the supply and demand of platinum and palladium. There will be a very huge shortfall there, especially given the year 24 and 25. If you look at the total supply and demand summary chart, if you look deeper into that, you'll find that on the demand side. That is to say that by the year 23, 24, 25, it turns out that maybe the demand actually is growing fast in which sectors? First of all, we can see the auto sector is the fastest growing sector for the demand of platinum, which is followed by like investment purposes as well. So investment purposes are restricted to, say, like a physical investment. So what that I mean is that a platinum bar and a platinum coin, these are the limited areas where they're going to see a strong demand for investment. So you can tell that from the supply and demand. In the future, so the demand contributors will be like OEM sectors and investment purposes. They are the drivers of the demand side. Process of applying this pattern. So China, especially China, because China is accounting for 1/3 of the global total demand. As a result of that, China's demand is going to rising. It's going to be increasing. And the rising demand in China is going to add up the fear for global demand as well. In September 2022, this year, NDRC for China has already promulgated the medium-term and long-term plan guideline for development of hydrogen. I remembered very clearly that on the 23rd of March 2022, on the break of the news, there is not a lot of price volatility for platinum, but for the individual stocks linked to hydrogen have gone through a lot of roller skater kind of price volatility, and a lot of them have reached their price limits up. And so that is to say, capital investors really appreciate the potential of hydrogen. So in the response to the national policy, they really appreciate the idea of hydrogen. So based on wind data, by the year 2021, so think about the hydrogen concept index is up by 44.94%. So that is to say that if a hydrogen concept stocks actually last year, they were performing really well and decently. I think this is related to the long-term planning of China. Well, aside from its performance in the capital market, what about for the brick and mortar and physical one performance? It turns out that all over China, so all the different provinces started to do like the long-term plan for the 2021 to 2035. In Shanghai, we have observed that Shanghai's DRC and like in June this year, together with all the eight different agencies, rolled out a medium-term and long-term hydrogen development plan. So in Dalian, where I'm resided in, so part of the Liaoning province. So in Liaoning provincial, the medium and longer-term hydrogen development guideline, Dalian has been designated as a very important hub city, of which we are going to be responsible for the production, storage, transportation, and utilization of hydrogen. And then end of the year 2018, early 2019, we're going to go in the market of the physical trading of a platform, Platinum. I used to do some training for the banks and training some retail investors back then. So in my course, when told them about 4 different demand sides, I told them, what is a platinum? So platinum is a catalyst for hydrogen fuel cell. So that's why it could be applied in autos. And then back in the year 2019, so around us, so we could almost see nothing available in the market. So what's not available, like hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, is not existent on the streets or on the roads. But just 2 years following that, by the year 2021, in Dalian municipality, we have seen like a fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell vehicle as well, including like this year. So at this year's Beijing Winter Olympics, it turns out that so the Beijing Winter Olympics is developing a philosophy of which they're trying to develop like environmental protection as a theme. So this time around for the Beijing Winter Olympics, think about all the different cars. I think they are all powered by hydrogen fuel cell. So now, in a very ubiquitous way, you see the presence of a lot of Olympics-related vehicles still being used in operation in Beijing as well. So the CBD in Beijing several days ago have had some news that they have like commercial vehicles powered by hydrogen fuel cell as well. So the hydrogen fuel cell, this technology and its application in the transportation industry, as time elapses and time goes, so it's just like EV is going to be closer to us. So that's why our impression is that maybe we are going to have a better and better experiences as well. It's quite unlike back in the year 2019. So back then, when we started to talk about the concept to everyone thinks that it's just a concept. It's not feasible, but now it's visible. You can see it. So now it's a real concept right now. It's a real reality, not just a concept. In the planning for NDRC, they mentioned there are 3 different important things we should watch out for. First one is that they mentioned that we have to explore the areas of which we set up like hydrogen formulation base, of which there are a lot of application requirement. And second one is a keyword. We should give priority towards the application of the heavy-duty vehicle of the hydrogen application. So yesterday, echoing the points by speakers yesterday, hydrogen fuel cell not only finds its relevance in auto, but also the vessels and airplanes as well. But based on the wording from the hydrogen industry medium-term, long-term development plan, so there is a keyword talking about heavy-duty trucks, heavy-duty vehicles. And the third part emerging from the document is that we want to support companies to go listing at a Star board or like the GM board. So this is the planning from China's national government in March. And And then into August, so MIT, if you log on to the website, you find that there are 20 different types of the hydrogen-powered heavy-duty vehicles, trucks or something. They are in use in Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, Jiaxing, Dingzhou, Erdos, etc. So they are running some pilot programs in all those places. The national planning is already ready. So the next thing is that how can you put that into actions and enforce the rules? Yesterday, we have mentioned that by the year 2060, carbon neutrality should be reached as well. So as a matter of fact, China has already started to do some preparation to do the enforcement. Last but not least, I would like to give you two charts, if I may. So from the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And in terms of transaction volume, you can deep dive into that. And on the left-hand side, between the year 2012 to 2021, the bar represents that particular year's of annual transaction volume. We can see clearly that by the year 2020, transaction volume was hugely up into 21. The same is true. It's almost up by about 40%. So that is to say, platinum's demand, actually from China domestic onshore perspective, I believe that the demand for platinum is so much bigger than the preceding 10 years put together. So I think there are two things about that. The first one is the hydrogen industry. Hydrogen is one reason for that, and also for the individual investors. And so they have started to go into the physical platinum market as well. Well, on the right-hand side, you can see a few things. First of all, so think about the March of the year 2020, there is a reddish one on the upper right. You find that is a red square. It's about March 2020. So think about the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the transaction volume of platinum from the year 2014 until 2020. You'll find that this is historical new high for that. At the same time, we can tell that ever since the year 2020, and then so until the March of that, the August for that. Compared with the preceding years, you find that the bar is so much higher than preceding years. So that is to say that there are more investors than before, as I said before. As the points echoing my points, especially in investment, we understand more and more the international investors are trying to appreciate the value of platinum as an investment item. So I have finished my presentation about the total trend and outlook for platinum. I would like to thank everyone for staying with me and listening to me. I do welcome you to keep in touch with me online and off record after conference as well. Thank you.